Good morning. It's good to be in church this morning, isn't it? There's a lot of you out there. Woo! I like it. I like it a lot. Just wanted to, one of the things that's cool about our church and one of the things that I get to kind of talk about is at a church this size, we have just a ton of babies that are being born. And so we have one, I wanted to recognize this baby this morning. We have a picture, I think. Yeah, there is Brooks William Clucker. So, yeah. And for those of you who don't know, our church secretary is Kathy Clucker, and this is her little baby. So I'm sure she's probably got like a PowerPoint presentation she'd like to run through with pictures. But Brooks was born on August 20th. He's 8 pounds, 1 ounce, and he was 19 and a half inches long. So big baby boy, and I know the Cluckers are overjoyed with that. So just wanted to share that. And then I know there's another brand new baby here too, Michaela Stark. We'll have a picture. It's so new we don't even have a picture. It's hot off the presses. So we're going to get a picture of Michaela's baby this next week and share that with you guys next week. But I'd love to be in a part of a church that is alive, and we got babies and all kinds of stuff happening. So I just love that. So some of you, I don't know if you've noticed or anything, Weston McGee's here. How about kind of a big deal. I didn't figure anybody noticed that, so I thought I'd announce that. But we're glad to have the McGee family. And I just want to, on behalf of the McGee family, Tara told me I could say this, so I'm good. But just wanted to thank our church and our community for the overwhelming support that they feel. And just the prayer, wrapping our arms around that guy. God is doing amazing things in Weston's life and doing amazing things in that family. And so I am so excited to see what God has next. And so it's just awesome that he's here. I love it. And so I'm going to take, every time I see Weston, I pray for him. So I got to take a minute here and just pray real quick. Tara told me I could do that too. So it's Tara's fault. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, I just pray, God, that thank you for bringing Weston here and for bringing the family. And I just pray that you would just put a special touch on his life. We know that you are doing great things, God. We serve an awesome God, and we know that you have more in store. I just pray for Weston this morning. I pray for that family. I just pray that you just continue to work miracles in that life. God, we give it in the precious holy name of your name, I pray. Amen. All right, so I've been talking. If this is your first time here, shame on you. No, just kidding. I'm sorry. That's pretty harsh, isn't it? The pastor beating people up right out of the gate. If you're visiting for the first time, we've been walking through a series. I've been walking through a series called The Home Run Life, and it's really just an analogy of baseball. And baseball is something that we're all pretty familiar with. And I don't care who you are, if you've been around the earth at all and under a rock, that you know how the game of baseball works. And so we've been walking around the past couple of weeks. We've been walking around the bases, and it starts with home base. I started with home base, and home base is really just about our relationship with our Heavenly Father. If you think about the game of baseball, it all starts and ends at home base. You got to get a hit. You got to get on base. It all starts and ends there, and it all starts and ends in our Christian walk with a relationship with the Father. And then we move to, we get the hit and we move to first base, and first base is really just about, I talked last week about our personal character and getting that right and making right decisions and learning how to follow what God has showed us is the right way to live. And so today I'm going to be spending some time about second base and going through that. But I have Paul Little, he's a guy who goes to our church, and each week he has shared with me some statistics, and I wanted to just kind of share that with you this morning. When you think about home plate, and you think about hitting, everybody that steps up to home plate wants to get a hit, right? That's their goal, is to try to get a hit. But we realize that not everybody that steps up to home plate gets a hit. You don't get a hit every time you get up to home plate. And so Paul shared some statistics with me. I want to share this. I just think it's cool. It says, in the major league this year, less than 3% of major league players have a 300 batting average or over. Less than 3%. Out of possible 1,200 players, that's out of a possible of 1,200 players, only 3% have a batting average that's over 300. And there's nobody even close to 400. So just so you know, if you relate that to your spiritual life, you're not going to get a hit every time you step up to the plate. It's not all going to click with God when you first try. You're going to have strikeouts. You're going to have things. You're going to try things, and you're going to fall on your face. So I just thought that was a cool statistic. First base, and we talked about that last week, and it was really about identifying errors, and we talked about errors in the game, and everybody makes an error, and we score it that way on our card, and it talked about sin, and calling sin what it is. Sin is sin, and God has been very clear in His Scripture about what sin is and what it isn't. And so when we have sin in our life, we have to call it an error, and that's exactly what it is. It's an error. But I just thought this was cool too. And the point I made last week was that there's nobody in here that's played an error-free game of baseball. And so to relate that to the major leagues, which I think is pretty cool, another statistic that Paul shared with me were this year there are 20 players that have a 99% fielding average, but they all have at least one error. I just think that's cool because when you relate to your spiritual walk, nobody in this building is perfect. Woo! We're all failures. But I just thought that's cool, and I wanted to just share that with you. So as we begin to walk and we walk through this, and I'm going to share with you second base and how we get to second base and how we move from first base. First we commit our life to Christ, and then we kind of clean up our personal character at first base, and now we're ready to run to second base, which is really around our relationships and the people and the relationships that we have with individuals in our life and how that impacts how we live our life. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And so this morning I want you to think about two things, and it's kind of painful, but we're going to think about the best memory you've ever had. I want you to think about in your life up until this point. Think about the most fun, a memory that has brought you so much joy. You laugh, they're memories that you look back on and you kind of laugh and you think about and you think, oh man, that's hilarious. Okay, everybody got that? How many of those memories, by a show of hands, involve other people? Show of hands. Okay, all over this place. The majority of the place this morning, most of the best times or the moments that we have in life involve other people. And they're surrounded around other people. So typically our fondest memories involve those. I know I tell a lot of stories about my mom and my dad, and I've told a lot of stories about my mom lately, and people are like, man, I feel so sorry for your mother. Let me tell you, she's a tough nut. So she raised 4 boys, and she deserves she had us whipped into shape. But when I think about my fondest memories as a child, they actually involve my family. I had such a great family growing up, and I was fortunate to have that. I was fortunate to have a mother and a dad that loved me and told me that he loved me and invested in my life, and I love that. And so really, I talk about my mom, but she can take it. So, trust me, we've put her through it already. We know. The other thing I want you, and this one's a little bit tougher and it's a little bit painful, maybe it hits a little bit closer to home, but I want you to think about the worst memory you have and some of the most painful things that you had in your life. And I think if you think about those memories as well, they're typically, those probably involve other people too. As humans and as relationships, we have these relationships and they can bring us great joy, but they can also bring us great pain. And our relationships that we have either growing up with our family, relationships that we've had with our parents, relationships that we've had with people in our lives, maybe our girlfriends and boyfriends and our marriages and relationships that we have with our kids. And we have all this junk, right? And they can bring us such great joy, but it's funny how they can also bring us such great pain and such great anguish and heartache. And so the first step, I think, for moving to first base, and I want you to know, is really recognizing the fact is that these relationships and how important they are with us. And growing up, I had, like I said, I had the opportunity to grow up in a fantastic home. My parents loved us. They provided for us. They told us they loved us. I had a great relationship. They brought us to church. I was very fortunate in that fact that I had a Christian upbringing, and I had 2 parents that loved me dearly, and I knew it. And I knew that they would do anything for me. They lived for us kids, for us boys. And so, but I know that across this room, there are probably some of you that can't say that same thing. That have had hurts, and I think you've endured divorce, Maybe you've had parents that were more concerned about themselves than they were about you as a kid. You've endured divorce. You've endured broken relationships. You've had things that people have said to you that have hurt you to the core. And we're carrying around that baggage with those relationships. And so I want to talk about what that looks like and how we get around that. And the first thing, I think that when you have that type of stuff and all of our experiences with our relationships, and we have an impact on our ability to understand what a healthy relationship looks like. I think when we have that hurt, it begins to impact what a healthy relationship should look like. And it begins to impact that. And so the first thing I wanted to share with you this morning is I think that we have defense mechanisms. As we grow up and we have relationships with people and we get hurt, or there's damage done somewhere in our childhood or in our marriages or with somebody, what somebody said to us, or something that's went crossways with somebody else, we learn to protect that, right? It hurts. You protect it. You begin to build defense mechanisms. And you begin to form walls. And then sometimes when somebody touches on that subject or somebody steps on that a little bit close, you lash out, you get angry, you get defensive. When somebody puts their finger on it and it gets a little bit close to home and you're like, man, that hurts a little. That stings. And I think that hurting people typically hurt people and are easily hurt. People in pain have a tendency to lash out. And we begin to neglect some of the things in our life. Have you ever neglected things? Have you ever neglected relationships in your life? And just let that thing go? I'll tell you a story. I had the best thing that I can share, and this is as good as I could come up with, is a couple weeks ago, that's probably been a month ago or so, I had a really bad hangnail. It was a bad one. And so it was sticking up. It was right here on my middle finger. And so, I did a lot of medical research and found out the proper way to deal with that hangnail is to bite it and rip it down till it bleeds. That's what I would recommend you do. Not really. But that's what I did. So I bit this thing. I was like, hangnail. I was like, I'm going to rip that off. And it kind of bled a little, kind of hurt, a little bit. I was like, oh, well, it's a hangnail. It's a big deal. And so I didn't pay a lot of attention to it, and then it kind of started to keep getting sore, and I thought, well, maybe I ought to probably put something on that, and just kept getting worse and worse until it was this flaming pustule of pain. And I honestly, I had a picture of it on my phone, and I was going to show it to you guys this morning, but Cheryl's like, ooh, no, I wouldn't. Don't show that. It was so nasty, and like for some of you weak constitutions, I'm sorry, but it was like the skin was falling off of it. It was gross. And I let it go, and I didn't pay attention to it. And I kid you not, from the time I was born until now, I can't remember any worse pain. I have to believe it was childbirth right there. I kid you not. It was so sore. Like it grew so red and flaming, and like I could feel my heartbeat in it. I think my blood pressure's high today. It's painful. Every time, and have you ever noticed, like when you have a sore like that, or you have a finger like that, and you bang it on everything, absolutely everything. Like ding, oh, like fall to your knees, type of pain. It was that kind of pain, and people would run by, and Caden would be running through or something, and hit it with a baller, and I'm like, ah, and I lashed out, and it was painful, and I think that's often what happens in our relationships. From marriages to family to work to church, many people, many of us, have neglected and untreated emotional wounds that cause them to be overly sensitive in a certain area of your life. We have neglected those things in our life, and we think, it's not a big deal. I don't care if they're mad at me, or I don't care what I said, or I don't care what I did. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. And we neglect it. And before you know it, it becomes this pulsating red soreness in our life. And every time somebody touches it, or every time somebody brushes by it, we get angry, and we get frustrated, and we get hurt again. And adults, we carry around wounds from our childhood and from failed relationships as a result of our interactions with other people that's impacted. We've been hurt and damaged, and we lose the trust in people, and we're guarded as a result. And then what that results is that we're never really real. We keep this built up. We've formed this hedge of protection. And that was me. I bought one of those little finger things to put on it, to kind of keep it safe. And we build a wall to try to protect it. And what I learned was time does not heal all wounds. I think you've heard that. We hear that a lot, that time will heal it and it'll be fine and you're going to be fine. And I had to go to the doctor. I went to the doctor and they looked at it and they were like, ew, that's bad when the doctor says that. I had to get some antibiotic. I had to get it fixed. I had to heal. Winning at second base, people, in our relationships requires the admission that we are imperfect people who have emotional wounds that need to be healed. I had to get to a point where I said, you know what? That's not getting better on its own. I'm going to have to go do something about it. I've got to go to the doctor. I've got to get some medicine for it. We have to admit that we've got this pain in our life, and we've got these hurt relationships, and we've got broken relationships, and we've got broken things that we've allowed to fester over years and years and years, and we're carrying it around, and it's painful. I think sometimes you look at your families, and we look at our families, and we think, oh, man. I think sometimes we walk in here, and you think, man, my family is messed up. If these people really knew what went on at my family or what I had in my background. So a couple weeks ago, I talked about Jacob, and I want to share with you out of the scripture this morning the story of Jacob. And if you don't know the story of Jacob, he was this guy that God said you're going to do great things with. And but if you look at Jacob's life, throughout his life, it was a hot mess. Jacob had so much junk, and I just want to go through a few things that he had going on in his life. His first recorded success in Jacob's life was the manipulation of his brother. He manipulated his brother and got the birthright from his dad, so he tricked his dad with his mom's help to steal his brother's birthright. That was his first act of success. Then he continued to lie to his father with the help of his mother. And then if you read through the story, because he stole his brother's birthright, his brother Esau literally wanted to kill him. Like absolutely wanted to murder his brother. He had to flee, and he had to go live at his uncle's house because his brother was going to kill him. He had multiple children by 4 different women who were in a perpetual cat fight. All these ladies in his life were in a perpetual cat fight. He had children from 4 different women. I think sometimes we make our own judgments around people like that. But here it is in the scripture. His kids were guilty of betrayal, adultery, and murder, and they literally sold their brother into slavery. They sold Joseph, who was their baby brother. They literally sold him into slavery. Farron and I thought about that with Chris and Kylan, but we never actually did it. We didn't carry it. It crossed our minds, but we didn't ever. I was like, how much do you think we can get for him? But they actually sold their brother into slavery, Jacob's kids, and then made this huge lie up about, hey, Joseph got killed by some animal, and here's his bloody coat, and he's dead. And that caused Jacob such great pain. And if you read through his story, we find that Jacob was wealthy. He had done some great things. He had run toward third base, which is success, and we're going to talk about that later. But he had taken off, his first step in life was, I want to be successful. I want to make things. I want to have things. I want to buy things. I want to do things. I want to have this money. I want to have this thing. And I want to have this. And I want it all. I want my brother's birthright. I want to have. And so in the scripture in Genesis chapter 30, verse 43, it says this. As a result, Jacob became very wealthy with large flocks of sheep and goats, female and male servants, and many camels and donkeys. He was successful at that, folks. He was successful. When you look at his life and the way we do today, we would look at somebody roll up in here in a Bentley and, they live in this big fancy house or whatever. I haven't seen anybody at Salem Grace in a Bentley, but anyway. But I think sometimes we look at the external appearances and we look at what people have in their life and we think, man, that guy's got it together. Jacob was one of those guys. He had done great things. He was very successful, but internally he was dying. And he was in great anguish. And so Joseph was this favorite son of his. The scripture said he was kind of the favorite son, and Joseph knew it. Like he was cocky. He would tell his brothers, yeah, I'm the favorite. My dad gave me this sweet coat, gave me this coat of many colors, and he rubbed it in his brothers' faces all the time. And so they finally we're sick of it. We're going to throw you in a pit and sell you into slavery. It's exactly what they did. And then they took this bloody coat back to his dad, to Jacob, and said, here's, he's dead. And Jacob was in agony. And I want to read chapter 37, verse 34 through 35. It says this. Then Jacob tore his clothes and dressed himself in burlap. Talk about itchy pants. Those are some itchy pants. Jacob tore his clothes and dressed himself in burlap. He mourned deeply for his son for a long time. His family tried to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. I will go to my grave mourning for my son, he would say, and then he would weep. And my question this morning is, what if God is trying to show us in this passage that if we don't get our second base relationships right, our lives are going to be full of sorrow? If we don't get our relationships right with our family and our kids and those around us and the people we go to church with and the people of this community, and we're chasing after money and our jobs and whatever else it is, we're going to have a lifetime of sorrow. And that's where Jacob found himself. And so if you continue to read to this story, you know that Jacob was sold into slavery. He became the ruler of Egypt. Through his slavery, he came up and now he's the ruler of Egypt. His brothers, they're all grown, and there's a famine in the land. So Jacob sends the rest of his brothers to get some grain at the Egypt grain place, wherever that is. I don't know, it was like FS or what. But went to see Travis Gillett. Went to get some grain. And so when he's there, Joseph sees his brothers. Talk about an awkward moment. And I think... here's the thing. Healthy relationships are based on truth and trust. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 15 says this. Instead, we will speak the truth in love, growing in every way more and more like Christ, who is the head of his body of the church. And I just wonder what would happen if we actually did that to each other. Typically, people get kind of defensive or mad when you try to speak the truth in love. And you say, hey, you know what? That's an area of your life I need to help you with. Or we're speaking truth to people that they need to hear it. I just wonder what would happen in our church if we did that, but not only if we did that, but if we accepted it for the gift that it is. If people cared enough, I've had people, the managers in my life that have told me, yeah, you're doing a great job. The ones that I have more respect for are the ones that said, hey, you know what? You're falling a little short here. And because I love you and because I care for you and I want you to succeed, you're going to have to get this right. That's if we could care enough for people to do that. And I think many times we pretend that everything in our lives is running smoothly. Our marriages, our kids. When we walk in here, we're the fine family. People are, oh, how are you doing? I'm fine. I'm fine. We're the fine family. It's all fine. We have this giant elephant in the room that we're carrying around because we know deep down it's not. I have a video clip. I want you to. It's a little little test for you this morning. In this video, you're going to see people passing a basketball. And the video kind of gives you some instructions at the beginning anyway. But I want you guys to count how many times the people in white pass the basketball. Okay? Or they pass the basketball. I want you to count how many times. Kathy, can you roll that video here real quick? We'll see if we get it going. It kind of gives us some instructions, a selective attention test here. So let's see your attention. There it is. Count how many times the players wearing white passes the basketball. So we'll just watch this video. There's no audio or anything. We're just kind of watching how many times they pass the basketball. Just count. Count how many times they pass the ball. Okay, so lights. How many times you count it? Everybody count it. I don't know if we get the lights back up. So, can I get the? Yeah, there we go. Lights back up so I can see people. Who in the room, by a show of hands, and be honest with yourself, did not see the gorilla? Did you? Anybody that did not see a gorilla in that clip, raise your hands. Okay. Just so you know, Kathy, if you could play it just real quick. I don't know if there's a way to fast forward it a little bit, but just watch. And you can maybe leave the lights up. I don't know if it's easier to see. But if you watch during this video and they're passing the ball back and forth and you're so laser focused on the basketball passing that you completely missed the gorilla that comes in from the right-hand side of this picture. Some of you, I heard chuckle, and so some of you saw it when he walked in. You're like, oh, what's up with the gorilla? But there he is. Okay? Again, who missed that? Okay. I did too the first time. Completely oblivious to the fact that there was a gorilla in the midst of that. And I think many times this happens, and especially in church, especially when people come to church, we want to pretend that everything in our lives are running smoothly. Our marriages, our relationships, and we're so focused on putting on a show and passing the basketball that we fail to recognize that there's a giant gorilla in the room. And we're carrying that weight around, and nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to point it out. Nobody wants to say, ooh, that's awkward. Have you ever been in a room where you knew that there was like a giant awkwardness between people, and you could cut it, it's so thick you could cut it with a knife, but nobody wants to address it? Nobody wants to say, everybody's just like awkward. If we're going to have success at second base in our relationships, somebody is going to have to step up and call the gorilla out. Somebody's going to have to say, hey, this is not good. We need to fix this. We need to address it. But that's painful, right? It's hard to do. And if you read in this story, in order for healing to occur in our relationships, one person has to get healthy and be willing to talk about the elephant or the gorilla in the room. And if you read through this story, that person was Joseph. So you have this story, and there's this awkward tension between him and his brothers because they sold him into slavery. A little bit of a big deal. And so they have this interaction when they're all grown up, and the brothers don't recognize him, but he knows who they are. And Joseph, through a period in his life, it didn't happen overnight. Joseph, as a kid, was arrogant, cocky, little snot-nosed little brother. And God taught him a lesson over time. It didn't happen overnight. But if you look in Genesis 45, we hear that we see this meeting of Joseph and his brothers. And this is Joseph talking to his brothers. In Genesis 45, 4 through 5, it says this. "Please come closer," he said to them. So they came closer. And he said again, "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into slavery." At this point in time, the brothers are like, "Oh no, we're dead. He's going to kill us." But he says this, "But don't be upset, and don't be angry with yourself for selling me to this place. It was God who sent me here ahead of you to preserve your lives." Here's the deal. Healthy people with God's strength and character talk about their issues. They don't hide from it. They don't run away from it. Joseph hit it head on. There was an 800-pound gorilla in the room, and he said, "You know what? I'm going to address it, and I'm going to address it in forgiveness. And I'm going to show you what that looks like." And I'm going to ask the band to come up here. How might your life be different if you talked about the elephant in the room or the gorilla in the room? What if that's the thing that has to happen to restore relationships that are broken in your life? Who's going to do it? It's hard to do, right? It's painful. It's not easy. We don't want to say we're sorry. We don't want to ask for forgiveness. You know, I remember Cheryl and I had a friend, and they had a little girl, and she did something to some other little girl, and they were like, "You tell her you're sorry." And the little girl was like, "I'm not saying I'm sorry." And I think that's sometimes where we're at. We're just too balled up to ask somebody for forgiveness and say, "You know what? I'm sorry. I don't know that I did anything wrong, but I'm sorry that we have this issue in our relationship." There are 4 things I want to cover real quick. If we're going to win at second base, we're going to have to do these things. The first one is value others more than yourself. We are naturally selfish people by the sin and nature in our life. We have to have an attitude of humility that Joseph had and be willing to step out there and put yourself out there and say, "You know what? I'm sorry. I value you more than myself." Figure out what that looks like. What does that look like in Salem? How do we value people? How do we put people ahead of our own agenda? Maybe it's, you know what, but instead of going out and spending $100 on a meal, I'm going to take that $100 and I'm going to buy a bag of groceries and I'm going to give it to somebody. Or maybe that's instead of sitting on the couch tonight and just being, watching TV or watching the game or doing whatever, we're going to take this night and we're going to go visit somebody in the hospital. We're going to go pray for somebody. I'm going to go help a guy mow his yard. I'm going to go do something for somebody. I'm going to put somebody else ahead of me for once. Try it. Figure out whatever small little thing that looks like, figure that out in your life. Figure out some way this week that you can put somebody else ahead of your own agenda. Sacrifice some of your time. Sacrifice some of your money. Maybe it's a phone call. Maybe it's a text. Maybe it's a letter. Do something for somebody else. Put others ahead of ourselves. The second thing, give more than you take. Give somebody else the better half. My dad had a story once that he used to tell, and it was about a guy and a lady that got married. And in the beginning of their marriage, every meal they would have a piece of bread with their meal. And every time they sat down to eat, he would reach in the loaf of bread, crack open a new loaf, and he would hand her the heel. Every time. He'd hand her the heel of the bread. Every single time. And so after about a couple of weeks, she was like, she's fed up with it, you know. And she's like, "What? Seriously, why do you keep giving me the heel? I absolutely hate the heel, and you give me the heel every stinking time, and you give yourself the best, the good piece of bread." And he's like, and his response was, "I'm sorry, the heel is my favorite part." Give somebody else your favorite part. See what that feels like. First thing, value others more than yourself. Give more than you take. Forgive what we can't forget. This is an important one. I think so many of us, we had those things that were scarred, and we're carrying that baggage around. And here's a tip, you cannot hold on to resentment, carry bitterness, take revenge, or demand justice and have healthy relationships and win at second base. There are some things that you forgive, and I hear people say, well, I just can't forgive that. I'm not going to forgive that. That's a dangerous place to live, people, because that will erode you from the inside out. That will eat you alive. Remember how to forget what you can't forgive. If you can't forgive, just forget it. Move on. Give it to Jesus. And learn how to forgive what we can't forget. The fourth thing, let God change people. I think sometimes we go out and we try to change people. That's what Joseph's brothers did. They were like, well, we're going to teach him a lesson. We're going to show him. And they did, kind of. But really, God changed Joseph. Through that experience and through that hard time and through that difficult time, God used him mightily. Allow God to change you, people. Nothing I can say or do is going to change you. That has to be a choice by each and every one of us. And we have to let God change people. So in closing, I just want a couple things real quick. I watched this show called Alone. Anybody ever seen it? No, somebody. I watched a show, and the premise of the show is there are 10 guys. 10 guys, they take 10 men, they get 10 items. They get to go out in the wilderness of the Pacific Northwest. They dump them off in the wilderness. And the whole premise of the show was whoever's the last guy standing wins $500,000. There was no limit time set. They were like, whoever can live out there and survive on their own the longest wins $500,000. The guy that won it, they had the season finale this week. I watched it. The guy that won it, he'd been out there for 56 days. But it was interesting watching that because all of them were really successful. They got fire, they got clean water, they were able to build shelter, they were able to find food. They were, by all in parts, he was really successful at surviving out there. Could have lived out there probably indefinitely. But the thing they struggled with the most was the solitary confinement. They were all by themselves. And he said this, and I want to read this real quick. It says, this was the quote of the guy that won the show. It said this: time in the woods also makes you appreciate society. You're not meant to be isolated or alone for a long period of time. It's just not in our DNA. It's not how we're wired. There's really no place like home. There's no substitute for that. All the things that we make so much drama about don't mount to a hill of beans because we're all just passing through for a short time. All the stuff we have all this anxiety and drama about and argue over means nothing. In the end, it only comes down to love. That's really the only legacy you got, I think, that lasts. The love you show your children, the love you show your friends, that carries on. That ripples through eternity. The rest of it is just rubbish. Thought that was pretty insightful. Romans 12:33-5 says this: because of the privilege and the authority of God has given me, I give each of you this warning. I love this part. Don't think you are better than you really are. I love that. Be honest in your evaluation of yourself. Measuring yourselves by faith God has given us. Just as our bodies have many parts and each part has a special function, so it is with Christ's body. We are many parts of one body, but we all belong to each other. I want you to stand this morning. I think probably there are some of you in here that are hurting people. And you've let things in your life fester like my finger, and it's sore. And it makes you mad, and it makes you angry. And I think some of us have issues we need to address. Some of us have that gorilla in the room, that elephant in the room in our relationships that we need to address, that we need to call out. It's like the Fine family. Quit being the Fine family. We get the elephant, we almost make it like a family pet. Just carry it around with us. We need to learn to value others better, more than ourselves, and allow God to change us in the people He wants us to be. So I just ask you to bow your head this morning. I'm going to pray. Some of you guys got a lot of stuff going on in your life, and these altars are open, and you're welcome to come pray here. It's where I found Jesus. It's a great place to be. And if you want to, that's fine, and we'll pray, and then we'll sing and get out of here. But I just want you to I'm going to call it just a part of that Romans. It says, be honest in your evaluation of yourself, measuring yourself by the faith that God has given us. As I pray, if you feel like you want to come pray, come on down. If not, you can pray in your seat. But I'm going to pray for you this morning. Heavenly Father, I just ask, Lord, this morning that there's someone here that, Lord, that you just help them to take that step toward you. That if there's somebody here that has a broken relationship that's wrecking their advancement to second base and getting into scoring position, God, I just pray that you would just help us address that right now. Help us not to leave this place without making that right with you. Help us to ask you to help us with those things, God. I just pray that you would just help carry us out of this place. Help us to be a church of people that are reaching out and putting others in front of ourselves. Help us to be determined to fix our broken relations. Help us to be determined to forgive what we can't forget. God, I pray that we just give that to you this morning, that we can be that type of people that you would have us to be, that we could be honest in our self-evaluation. Holy Father, I just ask these things in your precious holy name. Amen. As we go, I'm going to ask Jeremy to sing. Let us close this with a song. But church, be honest with yourself. Don't walk out of here and not make those relationships right. It's a team sport. You can't move from first base to second base until one of your teammates gets a hit and advances you around. It takes us all. I can't do this by myself just because I'm the pastor. We're all called. We're all called to go out to this community and share the love of Jesus Christ and share with people the hope that they have, that they can put their trust in a God that loves them right where they're at. So go, as we sing this song, take that with you.